Welcome to Q&A with S&A. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Shane.
And today we have a special guest with us, Olivia. And Olivia's going to tell us a bit about herself and what she does. And because if I start talking about it, I'll say the wrong thing or I'll say the wrong introduction. So go for it, Olivia. Tell us about yourself and about what you do.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Yeah, my name is Olivia Clark-Moffatt, and at the moment I work for a philanthropic foundation called Australian Communities Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're specialists in helping everyday Australians use all the power of philanthropic structures and services to really get their giving where they want it to go, to maximise the change and the difference they can make in Australia. And my job is just to explain that to people all day long, whether there's a single person, a family with young kids or young adults, for-purpose businesses, corporates, whoever. I just try and explain it and then we design solutions that work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that our listeners are aware, we had Olivia come in with her team last night to Aintree Group and they talked about how all of this works from a giving perspective as a business and for us to be able to give information to our clients, because it's a really important thing to be able to talk about, isn't it, Olivia? You said to us last night that the environment in Australia is such that people don't like to talk about their giving, and you know it feels a little bit like it's an uncomfortable conversation to have.
Yeah, definitely.
So, tell us a little bit about how what you do overcomes those sorts of barriers with conversations around philanthropy.
Yeah, well, and things like this are just so helpful. So thank you. It is true. In Australia, Australians are really generous, and especially when they see it in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So when a neighbour's in need, when the local school or kinder needs something, when friends of friends are in trouble, and especially around crisis and tragedy, of course, we see that all the time when terrible things are happening in Australia, just the way in which people rally around them. And then on the flip side, if there's a sense that if you talk about it, like if you have never at a barbecue started a sentence with, well, our family thinks about our giving and we give money away to XYZ, or we have a family foundation, that's not the kind of things that Australians hear at the barbie or at gatherings. And I think it's all part of that tall poppy syndrome, and people are worried that they're going to be seen as moralising and looking down on others. So it's kept pretty private. So it's fantastic when there are advisors like yourselves that can have the conversation. That's brilliant. And some of the research we've seen shows that about 70% of people who do get support from lawyers and accountants and wealth advisors do want to have that conversation but don't even know how to have it really. And then what we do is at our foundation, we've got about 1,000, 2,000 people who are pretty actively involved around Australia, and they often represent dozens and dozens of other people at work or at home. And we run about 30 or 40 events a year. We have a really great website and social media presence. So just creating spaces where you know everyone else in the room is giving.
Yeah.
And so there's not going to be that sense of, people are taking this the wrong way, and just creating those safe spaces and creating lots of resources so that we can start to have some everyday language around it.
Yeah.
Even the word philanthropy is kind of like, that's a bit of a
bit
of a word we don't use every day. So we just talk about giving.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important too, because in other places in the world, philanthropy is a big thing, and it is talked about from a family perspective. And there are, I think in the US in particular, it's a pretty common thing that families would have their own foundations or, giving situations. And we just don't have that sort of thing here. So it is good to think about the language that you use when you're talking about giving, because it is there's a different feeling to it, isn't it? It's like philanthropy sounds like, only rich people do philanthropy, but
that's right.
the rest of us throw some coins in a jar or something like that, and nobody thinks twice about those sorts of things.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got those Aussie heroes that do those really generous big things around disasters. And I think if we can grow the story in Australia so the Aussie heroes are the everyday Australians. One of our great stories is a family that joined us last year. A middle-class normal family. They're all actually social workers or occupational therapists or those kind of things. the dad's mum died, and
Okay.
they decided her entire gift of inheritance to them, they've put into a fund to give away. They just kind of go, we know that we are doing well enough. There's 2 daughters, neither of them own a home. You could really understand if they said, thanks, Grandma, we'll put that into a deposit for a home.
Yeah.
But they've given the whole lot into a fund to give away over the next kind of 50 years.
Yeah.
And we were all in tears at the foundation when they were telling their story, because it was just and they're a great Aussie hero. They're a great Aussie hero.
Yeah. Yeah. People probably don't think about those sorts of things often. And like you said, they don't talk about it at the Barbie about what they're doing in terms of giving. But most people are giving in some way, aren't they? Like the statistics that you talked about last night with us and our team, most Australians are giving. So how does that work?
Right. Yeah. So again, it is clear as a society that we are very generous. That is really known. And so there is a large amount of giving that isn't regulated by the charity regulator. And as we say, that's to friends and family and extended. And if you look at Kickstarter and a lot of those platforms, you see that reflected. If you look at how we support groups and individuals through Patreon, all of those things, it's happening. And it's happening without tax deductions. And so really generous stuff. And then on average, we'd say Australians, on average, when they choose to give more formally, they give about $250.
Yep.
And then we're seeing a whole emerging group of people giving, thousands a year and then tens of thousands. And that's when some of the stuff we'll talk about now is really important because you can do so much more with it when you get a bit of help.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to us through the different things that people can do from a personal perspective or from a business perspective, because some of our listeners are business people, but some of them are family people as well. So they're not in the same situation, but you can essentially set up the same sorts of structures no matter what, can't you? Like a business and a family can be treated in the same sort of way.
Sure can.
Yeah.
And look, the first thing we'd say is do the really fun bit that you want to do first. So as soon as you're thinking of having those thoughts, maybe we need a trust or a foundation or a fund, or maybe we need something more, and we're hearing that we can be more tax effective, or we're hearing that we can give, in what we call perpetuity, which is forever, or at least for the next 50 or 100 years. We're hearing this and we don't understand it. Just before you start on these really long, complicated discussions about structures with an accountant or a lawyer, just stop and actually capture your vision. So we would always say in Australia, because of the regulation, the structure and the services you need are clear when you know what your vision is and you know the problem and what you want to do. So even if you're just saying, look, it's general charitable, we're going to have a very large amount of money come in through the sale of a business, but then we won't have much to give after that. So we'll make this one big donation, and then that will have to do, all our giving will have to come out of that.
Yeah.
Or you might say we've got really complicated businesses and we want to move assets around before tax across and out of those businesses. Well, that tells you need a particular structure.
Yeah.
If it's a one-off big donation, that tells you need another kind of structure. If, as you think about your vision, you've really got a high-risk appetite and you want to be giving to the things that are brand new and are trying new and different ways of solving things, quite often the government hasn't yet endorsed them with tax deductibility, and so you'll need a different structure.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to understand the 4 or 5 major structures and the 5 or 6 different ways that you use them based on whether you want a tax deduction or not, whether you're giving to a registered charity or not, dream your dreams and then come and talk to someone like me. So I just say that always do that first, really think it through. And as we did with you guys last night, there's lots of great ways that we can help you break it down and answer simple things like what's the issue, who are the people, where do you want to make the impact, and how are you going to attack this problem? And then that starts to make your vision really clear. So once you've done that, the structures become obvious.
Okay.
And again, you'll choose a structure. If you're really confident to be a trustee or you feel in your family and business networks you've got between 3 and 6 kind of director level people who could become your trustees, then setting up an independent structure is probably pretty easy for you. If the idea of that you think, oh no, I'm just trying to free my life up from those things, then a structure inside a foundation like ours, which we call a donor advised fund, lifts all of that off you. If you trust our trustees, if you assess the competence of a foundation like ours, you can say, I'm going to open a giving bank account inside your foundation, get all the powers of your 27-year-old foundation, all your trustees for a fee, and then I can just focus on the joy of giving. So as well as tax deductibility, the complexity of your business needs, the duration of your giving, it's also about your appetite. What role do you want to play in your giving? Do you want to focus on your vision and the granting outcomes, or do you want to run the whole thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you're looking, is it a fund inside another foundation? Is it my own private foundation? Is it my own public foundation, or is it a trust? So public and private, really the only difference is private is you really cannot take in donations beyond what the private entity is, either your family and maybe your direct relatives.
Yeah.
Or if it's your company, it can be your employees, but not your suppliers. There is a bit of provision there that up to a certain percent a year can come from the public, but you mustn't actively go out and solicit money from the public. If you set up a public foundation, the opposite is true. You must make it known what your foundation is about. You must make it easy for the public to donate into it.
Yeah,
and so
okay.
then you need fundraising licenses and a whole lot of other stuff. So which structure you want kind of tells you, is it private, is it public? And then if it's complicated, it's a trust. And then if you just want to focus on the joy of giving and you love what a foundation like us is about, there's probably only about six choices in Australia to open a donor advised fund. Then you just open a fund with us. It takes a week and off you go, focusing on your giving.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing that we can talk about as well, is that it can be really complicated if your affairs are complicated and you want to make it complicated, it can be. But then you can also help people set things up in a really fast way that still complies with all of the things that it needs to, because you've got the structures in place to be able to say,
100%.
we can do all of this for you. And I think that's when you sat with our team last night, I'd heard what you had to say, but the rest of the team hadn't heard it. And I think everyone sort of had that aha moment when you said, we can do all of that for you. Like that's a service that we provide, which I think a lot of families might be, you spoke about your own personal circumstances as well, and how it makes it easier for families to be able to get their heads around that very simple thing that we have to work on what we want to give to, whilst what you do in your business is make sure that people have access to that easy giving option.
Yeah, 100%.
Because most of us are giving to all sorts of different places. And what we found in our business was that we had some of our team come together at the end of last year and say, Aintree Group does all this amazing stuff, but it's sort of piecemeal, and we do this over here and we do that over here, and everything's really thought about. Like, we're not just donating money left, right and centre, but there's no structure to what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so what you do is provide that ability to say, this is what we do and these are the reasons why. And I think that's a really attractive thing for families as well as for businesses, because we don't know what's out there. Like, I don't think there's too many people who know that you can do these things.
Yeah, and so the exciting thing for your team is to say, you've been doing this, you've got a good idea of what's excited you, who you are, as you say, your values, sat down with the team and have done all that. So we can help you turn that into a giving framework.
Yeah.
Then our team can say, wow, when we think that your passion is there, here's all these charities that fit that.
Yeah.
And here are all these charities that you can also volunteer with that fit it. And here's a structure and a fund that a couple of your people can just log in and see everything.
Yeah.
And behind the scenes, we can work with your payroll and people who want to make salary sacrifice or donations. We can do all that. We issue all the tax deductible receipts. You log on, see it all in one place, see the grants you made. You can even click on those charities and see any reports from them. So it just takes it to the next level without you having to be an expert in philanthropy.
Yeah. Yeah, which is something that I think is really attractive. Like you can, we always say to people, our advice for business owners is to get expert advice.
Yes,
and this is one of those situations where it's expert advice on something that you thinking about necessarily in your forefront. And like you said, unless you know 5 or 6 people who can run a foundation for you, it's hard to be able to do that on your own. So.
It is. And a lot of private foundations get set up and maybe a child takes it on when the parents are finished, and then maybe the next generation does. But we find second and third generation private foundations are really struggling to find trustees.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And you said before that, or we intimated that it's not for high net worth individuals or big businesses. This is something that can be,
but it's
it
not
can
just.
be, but it's not just for them. It can be for
Yeah.
anyone, even small businesses and middle Australia in effect.
Yeah, we're really trying to democratise giving because the truth is the change we want to see in Australia and the change that people who maybe are new immigrants or people who are lower socioeconomic or come from a different part of Australia, the way they want to change Australia is different to the way that Andrew Forrester wants to change Australia.
Yeah.
And it's great that he's giving back. Of course, that's fantastic. But he sees Australia and the world through a particular lens as a very successful business person who can lobby government. And we see our street level view and the change that we want to bring in a really different way. And so we want to democratise giving as much as possible. And the whole community foundation movement, depending on who's listening to this and where you are, you might have a local community foundation. And they're exactly the same idea. Let's take this big structure that only works if you have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in it. Let's all give into it together. And then together, let's give money to our local area to change our local area. So depending on where you are, there's about 60 community foundations throughout Australia and they're hyper-local and we're the only national one. And we set ourselves that task of nationally encouraging more and more Australians to use the power of giving structures.
Yeah. It's incredible. I think to myself that, we know a lot of people who give a lot. They don't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
Because you see what they're doing behind the scenes and someone might, post on their social media saying that they're at a particular charitable event or something. But there's so many people that volunteer their time and their money and their expertise to lots of different charities. And as you said, it's a thing where anybody can get involved in giving. And it's not, as Shane said, it's not just for people with millions and millions of dollars to give. It can be people who have a couple of $100 to give, because giving into a fund like yours can mean that they have a bigger impact than what they would if they were just donating those monies to the individual charities.
And so a couple of, just to help people really understand, for example, a really common thing is people say, let's get 100 people together. Everyone gives $1,000. So that's $100,000. We've already decided what our key change focus is. We invite 4 charities to come together around a barbie or a dinner, and we all vote on where our $1,000 goes, or we have 2 chips, for 500 each, and we all vote on these 4 or 6 charities that have presented to us, and every charity gets something that presented, and together the 100 of us in the room give $100,000 away, and then we sign up and do it again next year. So we can provide all the infrastructure to make that easy to accept all the donations. If you're a family like mine, the 4 of us, we give, probably 10 or 12,000 a year. I've got young adult kids now. And so our fund is growing. And then together we sit down and decide what do we want to support this year. And we call our fund the Moonshot Fund. And we have a range of things that are our fund's about. And then we sit down and use something that's on the Australian Communities Foundation website, which is a little portal that you can go into and type in some keywords, and a whole lot of charity projects from all around Australia come up. And they're often, really unusual charities that you can't easily find yourself. And so we then end up divvying up the gifts we want to give through that. So there's a couple of different examples.
And I think that's the thing with it, that you've said, like 100 people giving $1,000 each. That's, to some people, that's a lot of money. But
yes,
to,
it is a lot. It's really generous.
To business owners, that's probably pretty normal for them to be giving. Like, they'll give to the local kinder, or they'll give to here and things like that. So if you look at what most people donate if they're part of a business, $1,000 is not a lot of money. But when you put 100 people with $1,000 in a room, that becomes a really significant donation for a charity. And even if it is blocked between 4 charities, $20,000 or $25,000 per charity or something like that, that can make a really big difference to an individual charity, can't it?
Yeah. And when you're doing it, you know, Aintree Group have a local focus. So when you add in a local layer on that and maybe add in volunteering, you're just starting to build real community, inspiration, excitement, deep relationships, and those nights where the charities pitch and people vote are really inspiring, wonderful nights. And a lot of the time the charities say to us, well, someone came up afterwards and has pledged another 5,000 or someone's come up and they want to volunteer. And so they're just really rich ways of doing it.
Yeah, so it's not just a financial contribution. So there's other elements to it as well. So the volunteering, providing services pro bono, et cetera, if you've got skill sets that are needed. So that's also part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, so when it's a corporate or it's a family office behind a larger wealthy family, then really thinking through that social responsibility or corporate social responsibility, that CSR, the giving can play into that at many levels. So what's your vision? You know, the who, what, where, how, what's your risk appetite? That all helps you choose the charities, but then also how do you want to celebrate those charities? How do you want to make them visible? How will you use your supplier networks and your website and your brand? And then how will you volunteer? And we were talking about, I mean, there's the volunteering where you just use your people power and you go and pack bags or you work in the warehouse. And then there's your skills that you have as a corporate or as a family as well. And offering those skills. And then there's also, if you're a corporate, inviting people inside those charities back into your business to do internships or to sit and learn or work experience or whatever it is.
Yeah. I think that's an element that we hadn't thought about until you mentioned it last night. We were kind of thinking to ourselves, what can we go out and do? As you said, we do the bag packing, we do all of that sort of stuff. And then we were thinking, the next step for us would be how can we help with, you know, bookkeeping or accounting and things like that, legal work and stuff. But then when you mentioned the fact that you could have people from within that charity come in to work and get work experience and that, we probably hadn't thought about that before as an element of, you know, our giving.
And it really depends. So, you know, Australia as a place for refugees and asylum seekers and immigrants as well, you know, we work with some of the charities that we see are working with young people and young adults, and for them to have a work experience placement and to get a reference from a place like Aintree Group is potentially a really significant step in something that could be life-changing for them.
Yeah.
And in terms of these private funds, one of the key things which you mentioned before, you've got your own and you've got your own name on that fund. So I'm just curious about that. So if you do go through ACF for something like this, you can actually have your own named fund.
The exciting thing is when the charity regulator and the tax office look at us, they see Australian Communities Foundation, limited by guarantee, our directors, and we've got 4 large structures. Inside each of those structures are these giving bank accounts that we call funds. Charity regulator only sees those when we say, hey, they're closing it down and inside this little giving bank account is $5 million and now it's becoming its own foundation. The rest of the time they don't see it. So you can call it anything. You can change who the fund advisors are with a phone call or an email to us. You can change the name of it. You can change what you want to give to. In our case, we've got long and short-term investment portfolios, so you can change the horizon of when you're thinking about giving all the money away and then the growth and the volatility of those investments. And it's all really easy to do because it's a product inside our foundation and we control it and the terms and conditions and the fees. So, again, if you've ever looked at this and you've looked at, you know, the 4 or 5 groups that offer it, so there's us, there's Australian Philanthropic Services, Equity Trustees, Perpetual, they really only work with their clients. So there's not a lot of choice out there. But when you look at it, you're kind of going, hang on, they're all different names. They all do different things. Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation is another one in Melbourne if you're in Melbourne. And that's because it's a product. It's like buying milk. But the problem is you don't know what milk is in Australia when it comes to named funds or donor advised funds. And so it's so confusing. But yeah, it gives you all this freedom. You can call it whatever you want. We've got the Stingray Fund. We've got the Silver and Gold. We've got the Orchards Fund. We've got a lot of funds in memory of people with their name. We've got legacy funds that have the family name in them. Yeah.
Now, I've got to talk tax because Aintree
Yes.
we do tax.
Because of tax.
Go for
Yes. So you want to set up a fund, you make a donation to that fund in effect. So that's the trigger point for the tax deduction.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's not when the money goes into the fund, then it will be dispersed out.
Yes.
But it's that first transaction
exactly.
of the money into the fund, which is the tax deduction.
And I'm sure, as you know, that tax deductible receipt can then be used over 5 years. So again, if your clients have a very big event and they say, we are going to put $2 million this week before June 30 into a funded ACF or into our own private foundation, and we know that there's very little money to come after that, small amounts from the family or extended family. So we know it's that $2 million, the tax deductible receipt is issued, and then you use it as you use it. And that money now belongs to the charitable sector.
Yes.
So that's the other thing that's really important. And even if you run your own foundation or trust and you are the trustee of it, you actually have to remember you are the trustee on behalf of the charitable sector, not of your family.
Yeah.
So we honour the families, we honour our fund advisors, but we hold the money in trust for the charitable sector. And we make sure that any time a fund advisor says, well, we want to give it to this charity, of course we do our compliance work on them, and we love giving advice, so to maximise, that grant to be the best it can be. Because we're holding it in trust.
Yeah, so you can't put the money in and then change your mind down the track and say, I want to take that money back out. Once it's in there, that's it.
Now, there is a slight variation on that. We allow up to 28 days to reverse it.
Right.
So it's not an absolutely cold cut, but it pretty much is. And so the other thing we do is when people open a fund with us or when we're giving advice to help them set up a structure, why I say start with the whole dream and solution in mind is I never want to allow a fund to open unless I know where they're going to give the money to. Because it's gone into the charitable sector, the last thing I want is someone to say, okay, we've put $100,000 in there and you're telling me I can't give it to that charity in Nigeria that's run by these people. And I'm like, we just can't find the pathway to get it there.
Yeah.
We have to have checked that and done that before the fund opens.
Yeah.
So that's why it's really important to talk through where the money's coming from, what tax deductibility it needs, what kind of business assets it might be, how long you want to keep it and grow it, and where you want to give it to, because it really does. It's a one-way path, so let's get it right.
Yeah.
So if someone's taking this into consideration and the tax benefits they might get for, say, this financial year, and we're getting closer to the end of the financial year, timing of when you should start making that conscious decision?
Yeah. So look, two things. As long as you know that you're happy that the worst case scenario is it goes to one of the 70,000 tax deductible endorsed charities in Australia, you can on June 30th call us up and we'll accept a donation at 11:59 on June 30. And we actually have staff that work till midnight on that day for that reason.
Yes.
And so as long as you kind of go, well, that's the worst case scenario, you can do it last minute. But the more you've got a dream that you want to talk through, the more you're not sure if you need your own structure or if using our public foundation is the right way to go, start now.
I think what you said to us last night was that you can make that donation pretty quickly.
Yes.
Can you then say, Olivia, we've decided that we want to open up our own private foundation. So once you've done that, I can come back to you and say down the track, I want to do this now.
Yes, you can with us because we are set up for that. We want to be as flexible and as solution oriented as possible. So we do a thing that's called portability.
Okay.
So when you put money into our foundation, it can either be granted out to the charities, which is the main purpose, and you might eventually close a fund because you've given it all away. But you might also close a fund with us because you've grown it to 5 million and you're saying, we are ready now. We've been with you for 5 years. We feel confident in our granting. You've really helped us. We know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And now we're ready to be trustees and we want to set up our own family foundation. It's called portability.
Yeah.
And we allow it. A lot of places don't.
Yeah. Okay.
We're happy. We can live with, through gritted teeth, losing 5 million from our corpus because we're excited that you're setting up a private foundation.
Yeah.
Yes.
It can take up to 6 months.
Okay.
Theoretically, the tax office can say no They haven't ever to date.
Yeah.
And it's the regulation and provision is there for it to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
A few rules around it that I won't go into, but it is entirely possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with us, the joy and the great thing about opening a fund, they're free to open. There is a fee structure. It's a really simple fee structure, and if you ever close it, it's a $500 fee to close it. So the downside is pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah.
The investment is set up so that, of course, there's volatility. It is in the share market, but on average, it's set up so that after fees, you can grant out 5% on growth year on year, and our 10-year averages are showing that we're on that benchmark. And so that means that really your fees come out of your growth. It's a bit like your super when you log on and have a look at your super.
Yeah.
In the good and the bad years, it's like your super. And so there really is very little downside to setting up a fund as long as you're really ready to say this money is going to charity.
And you've got the discretion in terms of just donating out of that fund the growth in the investment.
Absolutely.
Versus having some sort of set amount per year until the funds run out. So there's all that flexibility within it, and that can change along
it's
the
totally
way as well.
Up to you. So again, if you're looking at one of the other providers, they will probably say you must give out 4%, and some places will also say of that 4%, some of it has to go to what we care about. So we don't say that, and we have. As I was saying to you guys last night, we've got about 145 million of donated monies from our 560 funds. And last year we gave away 37 million. So that's far greater than the 4% that the government says you must give. So we can now say to all our funds, you don't have to make a grant if you don't want to. There's no limit. If you want to make lots of grants, you can. There's no limit on how much or how little you put in once your fund is open. And you can grant out once your fund is over 10,000, just keep a 10,000 minimum in there. So you can change how much you give, you can change when you give, you can change what you give to. You can have years where you don't give away anything, you can have years where you don't donate in anything. It's as flexible as can possibly be.
So that minimum, you said that minimum baseline is $10,000.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And we offer a little thing called a gum nut, which is how my family started. And so until it gets to 10,000, you can't make a grant out.
Yeah. Okay.
So that sort of encouraged us to let's get there quickly so we can do a grant.
But I guess part of that as well with the gum nut thing, just to make our listeners aware, because it is really an accessible way for people to make a big difference. The money that you've got in your gum nut account, even if it is under the $10,000, still is part of your overriding fund, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
it's invested
you still
ethically.
feel good about being part of.
You come to all our events. You can use our fundraising licenses. You can do everything but make a grant out. And you just really feel fully part of it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important mental note for people to make as well, is that you don't have to have a massive amount of money to put in straight away. You can start small and build up your fund so that then you can switch your gum nut to a fund.
That's right. Exactly. Spot on.
And then it starts to do different things, but you're still part of the ACF community, and you're still, what I said was part of the benefit, I think, for us and for our community as well, is that we often, the ability to connect with other givers, because we don't talk about giving, is hard, because I don't get invited to, even if I am a giver, I don't get invited to the ball or the whatever. So, the big name people get invited to those things. And I don't begrudge any of that. I think it's great. And I love seeing, people be recognised for what they're doing and for their gifts. But it's nice to be able to say, I'm going along to the ACF cocktail party, and I'm going to get to meet people who are in a very similar situation to us. Like where you said you probably meet up at those events with other people who have started with gumnut accounts and have, then become more than that. And so you get to celebrate each other and how you have built something around that. And again, we don't talk about that with our mates at the barbecue or at the pub or whatever.
Right.
So,
so we've got learning circles online that focus on a theme. And if you want to, you can give into that area, but you don't have to. So it's not a hard sell. It's about learning and then co-funding for those that are inspired to. So we really work on inspiration. Yeah. As we said last night, we have an impact fund which once a year gives out to these key pillars of big social change that we think needs to happen over the long term in Australia. And again, we inspire co-giving. Yeah. We have a big end of year event in May in Melbourne. We're running a family giving day where there'll be 4 or 5 different workshops to join and lunch. So there's all these opportunities to meet different people. Yeah, our smallest fund is $2,000 a gumnut, and our biggest one is over 20 million, and we got everything in between.
Yeah, yeah. And the people who are part of that $2,000 fund are sitting in the same room as the people who are part of the bigger ones. And I think that's good too. It just normalizes it again. You know, nobody's talking about how much they're giving. They're just talking about being part of the community, which is a really important element to it.
One thing that I get involved in a lot is estate planning for our clients.
Yes.
And based on my experiences up until now, philanthropy has not been a big part of that in terms of the estate plan. It's all about just passing it down to the next generation. Yep. So I see one of the opportunities for us and also for people in general is to have that as part of the, to be more open to having philanthropy as part of your estate plan.
Yeah, for sure. And look, the way I'd also frame it to people and myself when I'm thinking about my will is part of the way I can help my family is help make sure Australia stays a strong democracy, a place where the poverty difference isn't too great, the environmental degradation isn't too extreme. Like the more I make Australia that kind of safe, healthy, inclusive, democratic environment in the future, the better it will be for my kids. So part of the power of your estate is to have that bigger vision that often in Australia we just think, look, behind my fence, this is what I can control. And that's because a lot of us and our families have come from really difficult parts of the world fleeing terrible things. But the more we can actually together give part of our estate to changing Australia, actually the better it'll be for our grandkids. So I think it is really important to think about that. There's a couple of ways that are really easy. You can use your estate to establish a fund and if possible, we love to talk to people, even if they don't give, they're not living givers, but they're estate givers. We try to set up with them what we call our legacy framework so that we store that with any information about them so that the future ACF team in 30, 40, 50 years can get that information when they're when the person handling the estate, the executor, contacts ACF and go, right, we know what this person wants to do with this money. Also, our impact fund is always going to be what are the big issues in Australia, how do you solve them? So quite a few people who actually have funds with us say, just put it in the impact fund. We know the good work it does. You guys will know what the issue is in 100 years. I can't guess that. So that's a really easy thing. And if you already have a fund and the residue of your estate or whatever it is you decide to give to Australia, it's simple. It's 3 sentences in your will. And then everything else you change with us, which is free, doesn't require the whole will, being changed, doesn't cost you anything. So the more you just put a simple statement in your will, it doesn't need to be changed, and then make the changes with us, the better. And that's whether you're an estate giver or a living giver, and we've got all the systems to help you do that really easily.
Yeah. I think that's a important thing to have a conversation about from a family perspective as well. So I know you've said that you have had conversations with your family about what you want to do, and we've sat down with our estate planning experts as well as a family, and one of the conversations that our estate planning team does is say, what do you want the legacy of your family to be, and is it just for your family and how you want that to be able to move forward, but is there giving that you want to do? And as a family, Shane and I want to be able to give as part of our legacy, and having those conversations with our kids about what are the important things for our family, not just now, but potentially in the future.
Yeah, wonderful.
And when you said, I don't know what's going to happen in 100 years, I don't want my kids to have to be constantly thinking about now is our is mum and dad's original decision to make a donation to this place the right thing to do? And we talked about this last night as well, that sometimes we hear about places that take donations and the money doesn't necessarily go to where we think it should, and that sort of stuff, or maybe something happens down the track and the charity stops for some reason or whatever. What you're saying is that as part of this process, when I'm making my estate planning decisions, I can just say, this is what happens. And then all of those other decisions come out of that. So I don't have to change my will if something happens with a charity I've decided to give money to.
And often people come to us and say, look, these are the charities I want to keep giving to. And we say, great. But then we unpack it more because we say, look, in 100 years' time, it's highly likely that a number of these charities won't exist. And so, again, we create that granting framework that breaks it down: who, what, where, how, risk appetite. And then here's a sample of their current giving, and here's a sample of the giving they want to get started from their estate. And then again, trusting the team in the future to say, we've got enough information to make the very best decision today. Really honouring this person.
Yeah, I think good conversations for advisors to have with families when they're creating a will as well, because we typically don't want to be recreating a will every few years. You want to be able to say that something is sort of fixed, because you don't want to be thinking about, is my will up to date every 18 months or something. So what you're saying is that's just a simple process, and then all of the decisions around the giving happen outside of the will.
And it's so much easier than a lawyer trying to capture it in a will, because you don't want to end up with a whole nother page of legal speak. And once it's in your will and in legal speak, it must happen. So we often are trying to interpret wills and looking at it, and then trying to make the best possible decision, and it can be that the will really constrains you, and we then have family members saying, we know that that's not what he or she would have wanted, and we're like, well, we're now constrained by this. We can flex to this level, but beyond that we can't, because trust is number one in our business, as I'm sure it is with yours. And so we will always do what the will says. Absolutely, you can trust us on that. And then if instead we have like a 2, 3, 4 page document, and even better, history of your giving, then we have this rich environment to really keep maximising your gift.
So from a family legacy perspective, really respectful around what the original person who set up the fund was thinking about, and then, having those conversations with the family, because I know you gave us a booklet last night that was really detailed, and a worksheet to work through about, your values as a family and what you want to try and achieve. And I think we try and do that from an estate planning perspective, but the framework that you gave around that was, it's a simpler process of like, what are the values? What are your values, and how do they fit with what you want to give and gift? And those things are harder conversations to have. So if an organisation like yours can sit around a table with a family who might have differing opinions about where they want their focus to be, you can create that environment for them.
And if we can meet the people, great, and write up something about you, we love to do that. But if not, we always try and start with a family member or someone who's been appointed to be part of it. And the first thing we do is tell us all about this person. And so last year we had a man who was a very devout Catholic. He was also a gay man, and he stayed involved in the church, and he loved music and liturgy, and set up a memorial fund for that. And because we knew more about him and talked it through, there was interest from the family members and friends that were overseeing this gift of money to not only do some liturgy and music support that you'd recognise as inside the Catholic Church, but also some really creative LGBTIQA plus choirs and some different things that really reflected everything we knew about him. But if we only had the paragraph in the will, we wouldn't have known to do that. So his family and friends really endorsed that we were spot on, and we came back with a really beautiful list of, here are some different possibilities. And it's just really important to know the people as much as we can.
And I think that leads on to the fact that, advisors and people writing up their wills, or even just people sitting down at the kitchen table writing their values and things like that, it's good to have an organisation who can help you with that framework rather than you have to go, okay, so what is it that we're trying to achieve? And you don't know where to start, what questions to ask. And, you can come up with a big list of charities, which is what most people would do if they're thinking, I want to support charity. Yeah. You'd start with well, I know this one and we support that one, and this one I've heard of, and
we can do that for you at the end and give you a whole list of things you've never thought of.
It's
flipping it around. Yeah. And look, the other thing that people listening to this might not realise is you can phone me at Australian Communities Foundation and I can bring someone from our grants team. We can sit down and have a 90-minute legacy conversation. We can write something up for you, and there's no cost to any of that. And there's no obligation to leave a gift to us in your will, because as a for-purpose organisation, if we can just help you think through your giving, we know it's going to make it better for Australia and for you. Yeah. But usually you do end up leaving a bequest to us, and then we've got that framework on file if that's the way you go. But I spend a lot of time talking with people and there's no costs involved. So, reach out for some help and advice. Yeah. And I'm lucky that in my job, just talking to people meets my KPIs. So whether or not you then join ACF, that's great if you do. But if you're better off somewhere else, I'd rather tell you that and get you set up in the right place.
Yeah. And I think for the professional organisations that are listening to our podcast, because we do have a number of people who listen who are other lawyers and other accountants and things like that. Just for everyone who's listening, Aintree Group do not care whether you contact Olivia from Australian Communities Foundation. We're not precious about it. The reason why you're on the podcast is so that we can talk more about it and get other professional services people to say, hey, these conversations should be had with my clients as well. And why not call you in to share the information, because it is a really good way for people to be able to give in a structured way without having to set up complicated structures and things like that. So if you're listening out there, please get in touch with Olivia and her team. It's a really good way to be able to have those conversations with clients. And I think it gave our team last night pause to think about the questions that we ask and how we can integrate those questions into, fact finds with clients and just, conversations on a daily basis about, we know what they're giving because we see the information, and then being able to take those conversations to a different level and say, did you know that you can do something that is a bit more structured, or that, might make you feel like you're a bit more empowered with your giving. So
wonderful.
Really important way to do things.
To add to that though, the offering that ACF does have is fantastic. And we will definitely be supporting them from an Aintree Group perspective. And so I've got to
stop moving your head
I turned my
Shane.
head, and apologies for people listening. I turned my head and therefore it might go a bit faint. But yes, I've learnt a lot from the presentation you did last night and our discussions today and otherwise. And it's just a really important part of what we should be doing for our clients and making sure that they're aware of it. And then if they choose to use ACF, then they'll be in good hands as well.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And to the advisors out there, it can be hard to have the conversation. But I imagine for those that have these meaning conversations is what it is. It's so wonderful. And that's where the real meat and juice is, I imagine, in your work as well. So however we can help make that happen. It's really great to be in partnership.
Yeah. It's been really great having you with us today, Olivia. Thank you for coming in and talking to us. And we will put all of the details for the Australian Communities Foundation on our podcast information, so you'll be able to find Olivia easily and her team, and the website details, and you'll be able to also find it on the Aintree Group website. So thank you again for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you, Shane.
I can't wait to come along to our first event.
Yes, I can't wait either. That's great.
Thanks,
you.
Olivia.
Thanks.